Good evening. I call the Board of Commissioners for Johnson City, Tennessee to order. This is Thursday, July the 18th. I want to welcome everyone who is here to watch our government work tonight, who are in the chambers, who are watching on Government Channel, and who are live streaming, and whoever's calling in.
That's a joke.
Yeah, maybe. So, anyway, tonight we are very honored to have Reverend Lester Latany from Friendship Baptist Church to lead our invocation. If we would all rise and remain standing for the pledge.
Mayor, with your kind and generous permission, I would like to first request a moment of silence in memory of Ralph Davis, former president of the NAACP, who was truly a hero for our community in making sure that everyone had the opportunity to be treated equally. Most holy and all-wise God, our Heavenly Father, we come to you in the precious, holy, and divine name of our Lord and our Savior, Jesus Christ. And God, truly we have come, as the mayor has indicated, to see government at work. And dear God, because of the fact that you are the one who ordained government, and you ordained government that it might be an opportunity so that all might be treated equally, that all might be treated with civility, and that as government works as you ordained it, it will be a government that is orchestrated in kindness, in tenderness, and understanding that every need must be met in accordance with the opportunities that you provide each and every day. So, Father God, as your ambassadors gather together this evening, these 5 ambassadors that have been elected by the people of Johnson City, to set the example not only in Johnson City, but in Washington County, in the Tri-Cities, in the state of Tennessee, and around our nation. And God, because you have ordained them to do this great work, we pray, God, that the work that they do might be a reflection of the goodness and the love that you show for all of your people. So, God, as they set the example of civility, as they set the example of unity, as they set the example of equity, we pray, God, that that example will ring all around our nation and all around our world. We pray, God, that as you speak into their hearts, into their minds, and into their spirit, they would be reminded that there's an opportunity that one day they'll stand before you and give an account for everything that has been done in your name. We pray, God, your guidance, your direction, and most of all, your blessings. For it's in the precious name of our Savior, Jesus the Christ, that we pray. And all who believe and agree say amen. 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 And amen.
Thank you, Pastor. Face the flag. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Reverend Latany. I appreciate your words, and also for the recognition of Ralph Davis. We've lost a real stalwart in this community this week. We've lost several this week, and I think it brings to all of us that our lives are short, and it matters what we do with them when we're here. And Mr. Davis, in his leadership of the NAACP and representing the African American community, in fact, all communities who need a voice in the greater Johnson City, was what he did. And he was a gentle giant. He was a wonderful, loving, and kind person. But his quiet demeanor didn't mean he didn't have a great deal of perseverance, and he never gave up. So we want to remember Ralph, and we will miss him greatly in this community. So I hope we will all his services on Saturday at Thankful Baptist Church, and we want to recognize that. So thank you very much. I don't think we have any changes to the agenda or anything tonight, so we will just proceed. Go ahead, Mr. Peterson.
Your first order of business is consideration of the minutes from your meeting held on Thursday, June the 20th.
Commissioners,
Move for approval.
is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun?
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise?
Yes.
Mayor Brock?
Yes.
Your next order of business is consideration of a certificate of compliance for a retail package store doing business as AAA Package Store, 910 West Market Street. The appropriate reviews have been made, finding no disqualifying factors. The recommendation is for your approval. I will point out to you, these are not something that we can approve or deny. All we're doing is affirming that they meet all of the local regulations to operate a liquor store. The actual license is issued by the state of Tennessee.
Now, is it the certificate of compliance where they do not have to be present?
That is correct. Yes, ma'am.
But they do have to be compliant.
They do have to be compliant.
Okay. So, Commissioners,
They do not have to be.
the certificate of compliance for the AAA Package Store on 910 West Market Street. Is there a motion?
Move for approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any further discussion or questions? Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun?
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise?
Yes.
Mayor Brock?
Yes. Now, the next ones, do we have to do them all separately?
Yes, ma'am. I wish I had a different answer for you, but
Sorry for everybody here. but this
legal
will take us
says we
a
have to
while.
vote on these individually,
Very well.
The businesses or the stores? Each individual store.
each individual store.
Okay.
Okay.
So
So,
I will work with you to get through these quickly.
Y'all may want to take a break out in the audience here.
there are concessions in the lobby.
Our minister just left.
All right, the first one is consideration of a certificate of compliance for retail food store wine for GPM Southeast, Scotchman number 3407 at 2300 South Greenwood Drive. The recommendation is for your approval.
Move approval. Second.
Any other discussion? Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun?
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise?
Yes.
Mayor Brock?
Yes.
Consideration of a certificate of compliance for GPM Southeast doing business as Scotchman number 3422 located at 526 Suncrest Drive. No disqualifying factors have been found. The recommendation is for approval.
Move approval. Second.
Any discussion? Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun?
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise?
Yes.
Mayor Brock?
Yes.
Consideration of a certificate of compliance for GPM Southeast, Scotchman number 3427, located at 1101 East Unaka Avenue. No disqualifying factors were found. The recommendation is for your approval.
Move approval. Second.
Any other discussion? Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun?
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise?
Yes.
Mayor Brock?
Yes.
Consideration of a certificate of compliance for GPM Southeast doing business as Scotchman number 3465, located at 2696 Boones Creek Road. No disqualifying factors found. Recommendation is for your approval.
Move approval. Second.
Any other discussion? Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun?
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise?
Yes.
Mayor Brock?
Yes. Now, ladies and gentlemen, that was the short list.
Yes, exactly.
We're getting ready
The
to
next
do
list
one
is
that's-
4 times that length, so buckle up.
Consideration of a certificate of compliance for Mountain Empire Oil Company doing business as Roadrunner number 6004, located at 2607 South Run Street. No disqualifying factors have been found. Recommendation is for your approval.
Move approval. Second.
Any other discussion? Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun?
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise?
Yes.
Mayor Brock?
Yes.
Consideration of a certificate of compliance for Mountain Empire Oil doing business as Roadrunner number 6005, located at 527 Princeton Road. No disqualifying factors are found. Our recommendation is for your approval.
Move approval. Yeah, second.
Okay, I'm not going to ask if there's any other discussion except blanket. So if you want to jump
Speak
in,
up.
jump
Yeah,
in, okay?
exactly.
Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun?
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise?
Yes.
Mayor Brock?
Yes.
Consideration of a certificate of compliance for Mountain Empire Oil doing business as Roadrunner number 6007 located at 4700 North Rome Street. No disqualifying factors are found. Our recommendation is for your approval.
Move approval.
Second.
Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun.
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler.
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise.
Yes.
Mayor Brock.
Yes.
Consideration of certificate of compliance for Mountain Empire Oil doing business as Roadrunner number 6011 located at 5022 Bobby Hicks Highway. No disqualifying factors are found. Recommendation is for your approval.
Move approval. I'm sorry, I forgot my job here.
And a second. Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun.
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler.
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise.
Yes.
Mayor Brock.
Yes.
Certificate of compliance for Mountain Empire Oil Company doing business as Roadrunner number 6014 located at 1310 Cherokee Road. No disqualifying factors are found. Recommendation is for your approval.
Move approval.
Second.
Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun.
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler.
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise.
Yes.
Mayor Brock.
Yes.
Consideration of a certificate of compliance for Mountain Empire Oil doing business as Roadrunner number 6015 located at 1702 West Market Street. No disqualifying factors found. Recommendation is for your approval.
Move approval.
Second.
Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun.
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler.
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise.
Yes.
Mayor Brock.
Yes.
Consideration of a certificate of compliance for Mountain Empire Oil doing business as Roadrunner number 6031 located at 3900 Bristol Highway. No disqualifying factors found. Recommendation is for your approval.
Move approval.
Second.
Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun.
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler.
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise.
Yes.
Mayor Brock.
Yes.
Consideration of a certificate of compliance for Mountain Empire Oil doing business as Roadrunner number 6032 located at 901 West Walnut Street. No disqualifying factors found. Recommendation is for approval.
Approval.
Second.
Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun.
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler.
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise.
Yes.
Mayor Brock.
Yes.
Consideration of a certificate of compliance for Mountain Empire Oil Company doing business as Roadrunner number 6033 located at 1512 West State of Franklin. No disqualifying factors found. Recommendation is for your approval.
Approval.
Second.
Commissioner Calhoun.
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler.
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise.
We're almost halfway there, yes.
Mayor Brock.
Yes.
Consideration of a certificate of compliance for Mountain Empire Oil Company doing business as Roadrunner number 6037 located at 832 North State of Franklin Road. No disqualifying factors found. Recommendation is for your approval.
Move approval.
Second.
Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun.
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler.
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise.
Yes.
Mayor Brock.
Yes.
Consideration of a certificate of compliance for Mountain Empire Oil doing business as Roadrunner number 6039 located at 2695 Boones Creek Road. No disqualifying factors found. Recommendation is for your approval.
Approval.
Second.
Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun.
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler.
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise.
Yes.
Mayor Brock.
Yes.
Consideration of a certificate of compliance for Mountain Empire Oil Company doing business as Roadrunner number 6042 located at 900 Sunset Drive. No disqualifying factors found. Recommendation is for your approval.
Second.
Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun.
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler.
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise.
Yes.
Mayor Brock.
Yes.
Consideration of a certificate of compliance for Mountain Empire Oil doing business as Roadrunner number 6043 located at 607 Twin Oaks Drive. No disqualifying factors found. Recommendation is for approval.
Move approval.
Second.
Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun.
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler.
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise.
Yes.
Mayor Brock.
Yes.
Consideration of a certificate of compliance for Mountain Empire Oil Company doing business as Roadrunner number 6047 located at 1908 East Unaka Avenue. No disqualifying factors found. Recommendation is for your approval.
Move approval.
Second.
Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun.
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler.
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise.
Yes.
Mayor Brock.
Yes.
Consideration of a certificate of compliance for Mountain Empire Oil doing business as Roadrunner number 6055 located at 5019 Bobby Hicks Highway. No disqualifying factors found. Recommendation is for your approval.
Move approval.
Second.
Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun.
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler.
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise.
Yes.
Mayor Brock.
Yes.
Consideration of a certificate of compliance for Mountain Empire Oil doing business as Roadrunner number 6061 located at 2900 North Rome Street. No disqualifying factors found. Recommendation is for your approval.
Second.
Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun. Yes. Commissioner Fowler.
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise.
Yes.
Mayor Brock.
Yes.
Consideration of a certificate of compliance for Mountain Empire Oil doing business as Roadrunner number 6065, located at 6757 Bristol Highway. No disqualifying factors found. Recommendation is for your approval.
Move approval.
Second.
Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun.
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler.
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise.
Yes.
Mayor Brock.
Yes.
Consideration of a certificate of compliance for Mountain Empire Oil Company doing business as Roadrunner number 6067, located at 408 North Broadway Street. No disqualifying factors are found. Recommendation is for your approval.
Is there a motion?
Move approval.
Second.
Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun.
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler.
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise.
Yes.
Mayor Brock.
Yes.
Consideration of a certificate of compliance for Mountain Empire Oil doing business as Roadrunner number 6069, located at 1001 South Run Street. No disqualifying factors were found. Recommendation is for your approval.
Approval.
Second.
Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun.
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler.
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise.
Yes.
Mayor Brock.
Yes.
Consideration of a certificate of compliance for Mountain Empire Oil Company doing business as Roadrunner 6070, located at 2810 West Walnut Street. No disqualifying factors found. Recommendation is for your approval.
Move approval.
Second.
Ms. Jennings?
I'm sorry, let Dr. Fowler move.
That way we can check the minutes.
Yeah.
Commissioner Calhoun. Yes. Commissioner Fowler.
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise.
Yes.
Mayor Brock.
Yes. And so that was the last one. If you,
Consideration of a certificate of compliance for the city commission to continue to
Motion we adjourn. I think we've done enough voting for one
I
night.
think if anyone in the audience wanted to know how many road runners we have in town,
Just heard him.
20.
20. We just
Yes.
passed,
So now you know. Mr. Peterson?
Your next order of business is consideration of a temporary occasion license for young professionals of the Tri-Cities. This is for a Founders After 5 event to be held July 19th, July 26th. It'll be held at the Pavilion, the Amphitheater, and then Founders Park. No disqualifying factors found, and the recommendation is for your approval.
And this one, the applicant does need to be present. Would you state your name and your address, please?
For sure. Jenna Moore, 603 East Market Street, 37601.
Okay, commissioners?
Move for approval.
Second.
Okay, are there any questions for this event? Everybody's familiar with this. Ms. Jennings, go ahead and call the roll, and then we'll let you have a chance to talk about it.
Commissioner Calhoun.
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler.
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise.
Yes.
Mayor Brock.
Yes. You want to talk about your special event?
Sure. Founders After 5, we're excited to help serve beer, and it's a nice fundraiser for us. We don't actually, YP doesn't have any fundraisers for our organization throughout the year. The only one we do actually benefits another nonprofit. So this is a good way for us to have a little bit of money to work with for professional development events, and we're hoping to create a website that it looks good with it. So there you go.
That's this Friday and next Friday, both
Yes,
of those.
this and next.
Very good.
Thanks.
All right, we'll see you there. Thank you.
Next order of business is to make 2 appointments to the Johnson City Public Library Board of Directors. One appointment is to fulfill the expiring second term of Joy Fulkerson, whose term expires this month. And the second is the completion of Tony Warner's first 3-year term. The bylaws of the library permit a director to be appointed to a second 3-year term if that is your wish.
Ms. Turpin, did you want to present your candidates for this?
I would like to. The Johnson City Public Library Board recommends Tony Warner for a second 3-year term, and Ms. Jennifer Dixon for appointment on the board.
You had some excellent applications here.
We did. We are lucky.
And I particularly wanted to highlight one, a young man who's 17 years of age, has quite a resume, who would like to be on the board, but you do have to be at least 18 to be on the board.
We hope he'll consider the Teen Advisory Board.
That would be great. Appreciate that. And we had others as well, so hopefully, with that much interest in the library, if you have other committees that they could serve on, I think that would be great.
Absolutely.
Okay. Commissioners, we have a recommendation.
I move for approval of Tony Wallner and Jennifer Dixon.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. You're a library board.
I'm excited about Mr. Warner's reappearance and bringing Ms. Dixon on board. Absolutely.
Very good. Any other questions? Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun?
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise?
Yes.
Mayor Brock?
Yes. And thank you for all you do for our public library. You know, it is probably one of the most visited public spaces that we have in town, and the programs that you do. We're all going to be excited when the new opportunities down below you, the Legacy History Circle and the Natural Playground are completed, and I know there'll be some
We are
great
excited.
outdoor space for the library.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you all so much.
Be good.
you.
Thank you.
Next order of business is to consider a street closure request from the Atlantic Ale House to accommodate the Summerfest event to be held on Saturday, August the 3rd. August the 17th is also a Saturday, as is August the 31st. And I'm assuming September the 7th is. I don't have a calendar in front of me, but I think that'll work out right. The request is to close a portion of McClure Street from 2 p.m. until 11 p.m. on those days. The event will begin at 4 and end by 11. Staff has reviewed and recommends your approval.
And we have almost as many street closures as we had certificates of compliance here tonight. So
Move approval. Second.
is the applicant here? We usually bring them, come on up, Jen. If you'd state your name and address.
Sure. I'm Jenny Lockmiller, and I live at 301 West Holston Avenue.
You got your motion and second before you even got to the podium
Oh.
here. Are there any other questions for
I
this
don't want to
request?
mess it up now.
Okay. All right, Ms. Jennings.
Commissioner Calhoun?
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise?
Yes.
Mayor Brock?
Yes. Want to go ahead and say anything
Sure.
about your event?
Sure, we're having an end of summer music series. We have 4 nights, 4 Saturdays. We'll have a band each night. We'll have one food truck in our private off-city property spot. And we, if the fire marshal will allow us, if we can make it work for the spacing, we'll probably have a second truck. There'll be a stage sort of in the stub end of McClure, backing up to King Commons, and it's all being sponsored by Wicked Weed.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Next.
Next is to consider a street closure request from Ballad Health to accommodate the 5K Glow Run to be held on Friday, August the 9th. This will be a closure of various streets from 7:45 p.m. until 10 p.m. This is the route that runs along Knob Creek and Sunset and utilizes the walking trail along State of Franklin Road. So these aren't necessarily a complete closure for that time. It is a closure long enough for the event to pass, and it only involves one lane on Sunset. We would recommend your approval.
State your name and address.
Karen Hubbs, I live at 916 Althea Street.
Okay, and you're the director of the race, is that
Yes,
correct?
yes, I am,
Okay.
yes.
Is there a
Move
motion?
approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun?
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise?
Yes.
Mayor Brock?
Yes. Want to say anything about the event?
Yes, it's-
Everybody's going to glow, right?
Yes, they will glow, and it's 80s themed, and we're sort of following the Stranger Things show. Not that crazy or scary, but it's going to be fun. And we're expecting almost 1,200 people, so it's one of the larger 5Ks for Johnson City, definitely. And of course, Ballad Health and their HR department puts this on, and the Wellness Center. So it's a great time, a lot of fun, and a lot of people dressed up in 80s.
80s.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I have to look for my bell-bottom pants, I guess.
That was 70s.
Oh,
but
big hair, big hair.
Big hair.
That'll be
Get your
hard for me.
Aquanet, you know.
Okay, thanks,
All
Karen.
right, thank you.
Your next street closure request is from the Johnson City Downtown Merchants Association to accommodate the Little Chicago Art Festival to be held on Thursday, August the 8th through Sunday, August the 11th. There is a map in your packet that showed the streets to be closed. Staff has reviewed the application and recommends approval as requested.
Okay, is the applicant present? If you'd state your name and address, please.
Thomas Breeze and 227 East Main Street in Johnson
Okay.
City.
All right. Back to you in just a minute. Is there a motion?
Second.
Motion and a second. Mr. Peterson, the only comment I would make, because we've got a number of these, that is there good communication with the businesses downtown? I'm sure y'all are part of that to make
Yes.
sure they have an understanding that this weekend and maybe the following weekend, and we've got 3 or 4 that are coming up in a row, that we want to make sure that we are accommodating our businesses and make sure that we don't block to the extent possible for for customers to get there. Okay, very good. Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun?
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise?
Yes.
Mayor Brock?
Yes. Go ahead.
Well, Village Chicago is in its 4th year, and it's done by downtown businesses. So it's just local music, art. So we just, welcome everybody to come down and have a good time on those 2 days.
No rain.
No rain, please.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Your next street closure request is to accommodate the Geico Motorcycle Built to Ride Tour from Friday, September the 6th until Sunday, September the 8th. This is a street closure request for portions of various streets downtown. The festival hours will be from 5 p.m. until 9 p.m. on Friday, September the 6th, and from 11 a.m. until 9 p.m. on Saturday, September the 7th. The staff has reviewed the request and is recommending approval. There's a map in your packet of the streets actually being requested to be closed.
Would the applicant come forward, please? State your name and address.
Jenna Moore?
Brenda Whitson, 603 East Market Street.
There we go. Okay, commissioners. Well, we'll ask you this in just a minute, unless anybody wants to know how many motorcycles are going to be in town before we vote on this.
September is the big motorcycle month. We'll have 3,000 at least long riders that'll come from all across the state or across the country,
Yeah.
and then about 10,000 spectators.
Wow.
Based on the previous event.
Okay.
Just a
Big
point
deal.
of information, Pete, the agenda describes it differently than the supplemental material. As far as the days, the agenda says it's Friday to Saturday, but the backup material says Sunday. You read it Sunday.
I did, and what that involves, the event is actually Friday and Saturday. There will be some cleanup involved on Sunday.
Okay.
And we'll need to get that completed before we can reopen all the streets.
Very good. Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any other questions, comments? Okay, Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun?
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise?
Yes.
Mayor Brock?
Yes. Okay, y'all want to give us a little more detail so the public can know about this?
Yeah, definitely. This event is free and open to the public, for starters. There's a big stage with live music. They have vendors with custom motorcycles that they've, like, top premier custom motorcycle builders rode into Johnson City. The event starts in Nashville on that Tuesday. They go from Nashville to Chattanooga, Birmingham, and then back up to Johnson City, where they culminate for the big finale of the rally. And it's a really good time. Last time we had several thousand people come and enjoy it, which was great. And we were honored to get the event back and hope that it becomes an annual event. And then on top of that, it's also just huge advertising for us, for Johnson City, and for the Southern Dozen, our motorcycle rides. This event's backed by 5 publications, Motorcyclist, Cruiser, Hot Bike, Baggers, big motorcycle brands. So we're excited about it.
So the visitor spending will be, while it's going to be great, it'll be the supplement to what's going to happen from a PR standpoint. We could not buy that kind of advertising that we'll get.
So why did they choose us again?
Because I think the reception that they received the last time, both from the city and both the city staff, Public Works, from the restaurants and the vendors, restaurants and bars downtown, this event does not does not have food trucks. So the restaurants are very happy, the bars are very happy, and so it does make for, immediate spending in those places.
They know to buy extra food.
They, yes.
And extra beer.
And extra beer, yeah.
Right.
Give us those numbers again. How many?
motorcycles are going to be here?
3,000 from across the country. That was what was registered the last time, so we're not anticipating any less than that, and about 10,000 spectators downtown.
Over the course of the
Over the
When they're
course of the 2 days.
downtown, they'll park their bikes. I mean, so from a spectator standpoint, people can come down and walk Main
Absolutely.
and Market and Commerce and look at all the bikes.
Yes, absolutely. And they're always proud of their bikes and love it when people come down to look at them because, they are not cheap.
Very good. All right, well,
Thank you.
Varoom. Let's go.
Okay.
Thanks a lot, yeah.
Your next request for a street closure is from the Umoja Arts and Culture Incorporated to accommodate their annual Umoja Music and Art Festival from Thursday, September 12th until Sunday, September the 15th. The festival will take place downtown on the usual streets. They are asking to allow beer within the approved area, and the staff has reviewed the application and recommends approval. Mr. Bradley, it's good to see you.
You too.
But officially, if you'd state your name and address, we'd appreciate it.
Joe Bradley, 13 Spring Knoll Court, Johnson City, Tennessee.
I love the shirt, too.
Thank you.
That looks great. Commissioners, is there a motion?
Move for approval?
Second.
And any further discussion? Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun?
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise?
Yes.
Mayor Brock?
Yes. So you want to tell us about we can expect from
Yes,
Umoja
ma'am.
this year?
Umoja, if you guys don't know, is the longest running festival in Johnson City for 24 years. We plan on having a lot of music, a lot of fun, and I've seen most of you guys down there, and I'd love to see all of you guys down there at least one day,
Part of the time.
either Friday or Saturday.
We'll dial the temperature down this year. It was a little hot, I remember.
But we
And
have
no
a nice
rain.
festival. It's a unity festival, a lot of people, and just a lot of family-friendly fun.
Thank you so much. We'll be there.
Hang on, Joe.
I'll just sit
Next
down for a
item
second.
is approval of the street closure to accommodate the Umoja parade, the annual parade they have on Saturday morning. Starts at Carver and winds its way around and ends up downtown in the festival area. And
Carver
we
to
would
Unite
recommend your approval.
Your motion?
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun?
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise?
Yes.
Mayor Brock?
Yes. We'll try to come and walk in the parade.
Okay, that'd be nice. And it starts at Carver, goes up to Unaka and down Main Street. And our grand marshal this year is going to be Mr. Jennings.
That's
Most of you guys may know Mr. Jennings played basketball at ETSU. Pretty good athlete. So plan on seeing you guys down there.
Very good. Thanks
Can
a
I
lot.
ask a favor of you, please?
Sure.
Will you see Mr. Stahl before you leave? He and I were talking about trying to get you to help us with something earlier today that I hope you're excited about. If you're not, I understand, but we were looking for somebody to fill a special niche, and you were the first person I thought of.
Really?
Yes, sir.
And whenever
Okay, I
people
will.
start running that.
I don't know about Pete, man. I don't know about Pete.
Joe, it's actually pretty good. I think we'll have
Okay.
fun with it.
All right.
Something's been dangled in front of you on TV
Oh,
that you
wait.
don't know what it is.
No pressure.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Okay, your next item for consideration is a street closure to accommodate the Johnson City Chamber Foundation Hills and Holler Hog Rally to be held on Friday, September the 20th. This is a request to close a portion of Commerce Street and a portion of Main Street from noon till 11 p.m. on that date to accommodate the festival. The staff has reviewed and is recommending approval.
Hey, would the applicants please come forward? Just one of you have to give your name and you're with
Brenda
the chamber.
Whitson, 603 East Market Street.
With the with Convention and Business Bureau.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
So we seem to be a hot destination for motorcycles, right?
absolutely.
We have a second one.
That means our advertising and efforts are working.
There you go. Well, let's go ahead and get a motion and a
Move for
second.
approval?
Any other discussion? Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun?
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise?
Yes.
Mayor Brock?
Yes. Okay, about this one, how many motorcycles this time?
This event, the part that's taking place downtown, is only one aspect of the Hog Rally. The majority of the events will be taking place at Holiday Inn and at Smith Brothers. We're expecting, I think, around 2,500 to 3,000. Last year, that rally was in Maryville, and they had 3,000, and it rained the entire weekend. So we feel like our numbers will probably be that or better this year.
And they'll all be riding Harley Davidsons,
That is correct.
so that'll be a big event in town.
There's no other sound like a hog.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Okay, so we'll see you there.
Thank you.
Okay.
Go Hogs.
Okay, your next request for a street closure is from the Humane Society to accommodate their Barktoberfest to be held on Saturday, October the 12th. They too are requesting a portion of Commerce Street to be closed from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. For the purpose of their festival. Staff has reviewed and is recommending approval.
Commissioners,
Move for approval?
is there a second?
Second.
Okay, has anybody been to the Barktoberfest? You gotta go. It's really adorable. It is. We'll let you tell in just a minute. So, Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun?
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise?
Yes.
Mayor Brock?
Yes. If you'd state your name and address, please.
I'm Jamie Majeski, 3624 Honeywood Drive.
And you want to go ahead and tell us about the Barktoberfest?
Sure. Barktoberfest, this is our third year having it. It benefits the Humane Society. It's our second largest fundraiser, and it supports our spay and neuter initiatives. And it's just a festival, a family and pet-friendly festival we have at Founders Park. And we just have area vendors, live entertainment. We have a puppy bowl, so we have puppies there that are available for adoption. And just different activities for people to enjoy the day. And it's good awareness for us also.
Thank you, and thanks for all the work the Humane Society does. Okay, thanks.
The next one's hers.
Okay, that's right. Okay.
Your next event is a request from the Humane Society to accommodate the Monster Mile Walk on Saturday, October the 12th, closing a portion of Commerce Street from 11:30 to 1:30. We would recommend your approval.
Move approval.
Second.
Any other comments, questions? Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun?
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise?
Yes.
Mayor Brock?
Yes. You want to talk about the Monster Mile?
So the Monster Mile Walk is people can essentially sign up and create a team, fundraising teams with their pets. Of course, they walk with their animals. And it's just another good visual way to just raise awareness.
Thank you so much. That's 9 events we've just approved, so I think it's pretty clear Johnson City's becoming a real destination for special events in our downtown area.
Yes, ma'am. Your next item for consideration is the consent agenda.
Commissioners, are there any things you would like to have pulled? Commissioner Calhoun?
No, ma'am.
Vice Mayor?
No.
Commissioner Hunter?
No, ma'am.
Fowler?
Done.
All right. I did have one. I'd like to pull A2. And just for a quick question. And then B2, just for an update on the project there.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So my question on A2 is, we're providing medical support for our inmates that we have responsibility for.
Yes, ma'am.
Is there ever any consideration that, the clinic that we have, the providers that do the clinic, do they ever get a chance to bid on that, or?
Not that I'm aware of. A little bit of background on this.
Okay.
We house 88 state female inmates, and the city is reimbursed at $39 a day, Carl?
Up to 40.
$43 a day. We're responsible for the first $1,000 of medical care that each individual that goes through the facility may need. The state picks up 100% beyond that. We have always had a net gain or a profit off of the operation of the jail facility, which includes medical, utilities, staffing, certifications, everything. It is a service to the state and to the community, but it's also a good opportunity for us to supplement our revenues without having to go to the taxpayers to ask for additional property taxes. We have used this same firm for a number of years in that they will come and not charge us for the house call. It's just services delivered. It's been the most cost-effective and most responsive group that we've gotten responses from. I don't know that we've ever gone straight to ballot and asked them if they would do this.
No, sir, not that I'm aware of. And most of the time, they do come to the facility. Sometimes, depending on the treatment, we may have to go to them, but generally, they come to the facility.
So the first $1,000, we would have to take out of the funds that we receive
Yes,
for
ma'am.
housing. And so there's enough built-in revenue there to cover those costs.
We, round numbers, will net $350,000 to $400,000 a year profit from the operation of the jail. That's after medical, food, utilities, staffing. That's net. So it's a good opportunity for us to provide a higher level of service for our taxpayers without having to go to them for additional tax dollars.
Yeah, the answer to my question, the B2 was just about the project down at Bolton.
This is a storage facility for public works, in particular solid waste. This will be the construction of 3 buildings there that will house our leaf collection vehicles, solid waste vehicles. It'll also allow us to store the solid waste containers that everybody has at their house. We're on a continual cycle of replacement and issuing new carts, so there's a storage need for that. We are beyond out of room at the current location down at the city garage. So this property is immediately adjacent to Iris Glen, which we own, and it's just a very convenient location and a good spot to do an expansion and get some more of our equipment out of the weather and get it into a controlled environment. It also gives us the possibility over time to perhaps even think about relocating the solid waste operation in its entirety over in that general location.
These will be enclosed garage type, big
One
ones.
of them is completely enclosed and temperature and humidity controlled. One will be a storage building similar to what we have for some of the other public works equipment, which is a 3-sided building with a roof, and it'll be open on one side so that we can back big equipment in and out of it. But it allows us to get everything out of the weather.
Bid, when will the project actually start?
If you approve the bid, you probably won't see any dirt moved for 60, 75 days. By the time we give them notice and they get their insurance and pull permits and get all those types of things going.
The name we've settled on for the facility.
That is not going to be the final name if I have any input whatsoever. There's no need in calling a facility by the former property owner's name.
Just curious.
We can call it whatever y'all want to call it. I just like to call it something different.
I understand.
Okay.
I move for approval of the agenda.
Consent agenda, is there a second?
Second.
All right. Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun?
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Commissioner Clement?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise?
Yes.
Mayor Brock?
Yes.
All right, this will take us to the ordinances on our agenda for this evening. The first being ordinance number 4698-19. An ordinance to amend the zoning map of the city of Johnson City, Tennessee, being part of the appendix to ordinance number 1519, entitled An Ordinance to Adopt a Code of Laws and Ordinances for the City of Johnson City, Tennessee, and to repeal all laws and ordinances in conflict therewith and amendatory thereof by changing from B4 Planned Arterial Business District to RO1 High Density Residential Professional Office District, certain properties located at 4505 Bristol Highway, is ready for your consideration on first reading.
Okay.
Good evening. Mayor, Commissioners, before you is a request to rezone 8.04 acres of property located at 4505 Bristol Highway from B4 Planned Arterial Business to RO1 High Density Professional Office and Residential District. The applicant, Appalachia Service Project, has requested the RO1 zoning to permit the construction of a multi-building training and housing center, which will include facilities for offices, training rooms, housing for volunteers and displaced individuals, a fellowship hall, and a gathering center. The RO1 zoning would permit all those uses. We have the future land use map over here on the left of the screen. You can see in this area of the Bristol Highway, it calls for commercial development abutting the highway with residential property behind the commercial development. Over here on the right, you can see the current zoning. This is the property here. The RO1 zoning would provide a suitable transition between the commercial and residential development. There's also already a existing RO1 district abutting the property. The concept plan calls for the construction of the volunteer center, training rooms, and interim housing consisting of 5 units. The concept plan meets all requirements of the zoning ordinance. And it is June 11th, 2019 meeting, the Johnson City Regional Planning Commission recommended approval for both the rezoning from B4 to RO1 and the concept plan.
Move approval. Second.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, this is a good project for sure.
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun.
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler.
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise.
Yes.
Mayor Brock.
Yes.
Next ordinance for consideration is ordinance number 4699-19. An ordinance to amend the zoning map of the city of Johnson City, Tennessee, being part of the appendix to ordinance number 1519, entitled An Ordinance to Adopt a Code of Laws and Ordinances for the city of Johnson City, Tennessee, and to repeal all laws and ordinances in conflict therewith and amendatory thereof by changing from R2 Low Density Residential District to R3 Medium Density Residential District, certain property on tax map 62G Group A, parcel 41.02, located at the intersection of Cherokee Road and Brook Hollow Road, is ready for your consideration on first reading.
Commissioners, before we get into the explanation of all this, this is my neighborhood, so I will recuse myself from participating in this discussion or voting. Okay, go ahead, Hassan.
Mayor, Commissioners, this is a request from Mr. David Myers, who owns this piece of property at the intersection of Brook Hollow Road and Cherokee Road. He's requesting that you rezone this property from R2 Low Density Residential to R3 Medium Density Residential. The property is currently vacant. It is surrounded to the north by single-family residential development, to the east single-family, to the south you've got Cherokee Road, and across the road, it's a mobile home park. And to the west, it is vacant. It's a large vacant piece of property extending down to the school. This corridor is essentially both a mixture of single-family and multi-family development. You've got apartments along this corridor. You've got single-family residential developments. The future land use map designates this property for residential land use, which is in line with what the developer is proposing. The R3 zoning district is a residential zoning district. It is the policy and the comprehensive plan of the city that medium and high density residential development be located along collector street corridors. Cherokee Road is a major collector street. The developer has submitted a concept plan for this development as required in the zoning ordinance. This is a prototype of what he proposes to build on this site, which is essentially single-family residential PUD development, at most 12 dwelling units on this piece of property. The concept plan meets the requirements in the zoning code, is being reviewed by staff and recommended for approval. The Planning Commission at its meeting on June 11 reviewed this request and recommended that you rezone it from R2 to R3.
Was
The
that,
discussion.
Anybody, I guess I'm not chairing, so I should
Yeah.
let you all go. Anybody have any questions?
I had a couple. Was there anybody in attendance at the neighborhood meeting? Or do you may not know?
At the Planning Commission meeting, yes, we had people at the Planning Commission meeting. Neighborhood meeting, I don't know.
And was there anybody speaking against in the planning commission meeting?
Yes, there were people at the Planning Commission meeting from the neighborhood.
Was it approved unanimously by the planning commission?
I think there was 1 or 2 dissenting votes on the Planning Commission.
There was a lot of conversation, a lot of folks spoke against, and there was a lot of discussion about traffic and speed of traffic that staff answered, especially on Brook Hollow Road. And then, if I remember correctly, there was a lot of conversation about the plan and whether the streets in the middle are those public streets, or is it a driveway? And I'm not going to dive into that. I'll let you dive into that and talk about maybe what you found out. And that was a lot of the conversation on the planning commission was, are we taking care of that street, or is it a driveway?
That's a great question. And then I also was curious, should the concept plan show maximum usage, not the other way? I guess I had a little concern that it says we're showing the impact of 10 units, but we may put 2 extra ones on there. And so I guess I just had a little concern or question about how that plays out. I mean, at what point I'm assuming adding 2 more units will change the road layout or something that could impact traffic flow or whatever. So I was curious about that.
There was conversation about that also, and if I remember correctly, it related directly to the zoning, which determined the numbers, not that plan.
Okay.
Because you couldn't say you could only have 10. I guess the planning commission could have done that, but they didn't say that. It was just a rezoning request.
In the zoning, okay.
With respect to, let me begin with the last question on the concept plan. In terms of the number of units, the R3 zoning district will permit 17 dwelling units on this piece of property. If you rezone it to R3, it will permit 17 dwelling units. But in the concept plan, he is currently, as drawn, he is showing 10 units, but he has a note on it saying if you get down to the details, because at this point, a lot of the detail work in terms of grading has not been done, engineering has not been done. And the engineer thinks he can get it up to 12 at most. Now, the concept plan is binding, which means if the city commission approves it with 12 dwelling units per acre, 12 dwelling units on this side, the developer cannot come in tomorrow with 13 dwelling units. For him to do that, you have to bring that concept plan back to the planning commission for approval and back to the city commission for approval.
And the 17 would not take into account any engineering or stormwater issues. I mean, 17 is just a X number of acres multiplied by, and so you almost never can get 100%
of that.
Okay.
Because parking, engineering, driveways, stormwater management, all of that takes some of the space. And the R3 zoning district also requires that the buildings on the lot cannot occupy more than 30% of the property. So that also restricts how many dwelling units he can put on the property.
Now, this is only first reading, so we'll have public comment next time. But one of the concerns I've heard from neighbors, not even realizing that the mayor was as close to this as she was, that's not who I heard it from, is having these units. I mean, I recognize that when you're near the collector and arterial streets, you're moving toward a higher or more intensive use or whatnot. I just have reservations of having 10 or 12 units that essentially have what looks more like a private drive exiting into what is a single-family neighborhood. And I'm normally sympathetic to a property owner making a request that's reasonable and just usually the argument is sort of not in my backyard, I don't want to look at that, it should be a cow pasture forever. Well, then buy some cows and buy the acreage if you want a cow pasture. The person who owns it doesn't anymore. But in this case, if I had bought a house on Brook Hollow, all those houses have been there, and if I were somebody concerned about what would happen on adjacent property, and I looked and I said, okay, hey, I could live with the 2.5 acres that are down there someday being developed as R2. We're R2, that'll be just fine. And so that, coupled with the running this traffic out onto Brook Hollow, give me some reservation about it, just because I think if you're buying property on some level, you're doing it with an eye on the zoning being there to protect you, or at least give you some assurance of what is going to happen.
With respect to the question on traffic coming out of Brook Hollow, this is, I think, the second or the third time that this developer is working on developing this site. And I think the first 2 times he went through Planning Commission and he stalled there because he couldn't get site distances to work. The first proposal had about 11 lots, single-family lots, and the driveways to those lots just couldn't work. They didn't meet city side distance requirements. And so the Planning Commission voted against it. And he tried a second time, couldn't meet the safety requirements. And what he has proposed this time, city engineering, traffic has reviewed it and determined that it is the safest. I asked the city, permit me to read to you an important review comment that I had from the city engineer on this. With respect to, because we posed the same question with respect to traffic coming out of Brook Hollow Road instead of Cherokee. Because he's in a corner lot, you can either connect it to Brook Hollow or to Cherokee Road. And the response he provided was, from an engineering and safety viewpoint, it is much safer to have traffic first enter onto Brook Hollow Road than onto Cherokee Road. The intensity of a crash at the intersection of the proposed driveway and Brook Hollow Road will be much less than a crash at the proposed driveway and Cherokee Road. The traffic volume on Cherokee Road is higher and the speeds are higher. The current posted speed limit on Cherokee Road is 40 miles per hour, and that on Brook Hollow is 25. So Brook Hollow, if you have a crash on Cherokee Road, that's a serious wreck compared to what you can have on Brook Hollow. And he also indicates that the standing practice that the Public Works Department Engineering Division follows when reviewing and recommending approval of driveway connections is to minimize the number of driveways and to have them located in the safest place possible. When the review of the concept plan was completed, the division's recommendation was not to connect a driveway to Cherokee Road as a means of reducing connections to Cherokee Road and place access on Brook Hollow Road where traffic volume and speeds are lower. Brook Hollow is classified as a local street and numerous access points are expected, in contrast to the expectation on a street like Cherokee Road, which is a major collector road. So that is the technical background on which he made that determination. And in terms of the density that is proposing on this side, if he were to subdivide this property under the R2 zoning district, he could create up to 8 lots on this piece of property. So what he is proposing is basically a different style of single-family residential development. It's not apartments. what he's proposing, basically the single-family residential development with walls touching each other. Fundamentally, that's what he's proposing. And of course, it increases the number of units. That's a fair point, because there are 12 dwelling units, and the city commission can cap this at 10 dwelling units. That's one option you have.
Answer the driveway question. Is that a driveway or is that a city street?
As proposed, it's a driveway. It's not going to be a city street. This is a discussion the Planning Commission has been having in terms of at what point, how much density can you create on the site will you be required to actually build a public street instead of a private driveway? And that discussion is still ongoing. Our regulations at this moment do not specify, we do not have a specific requirement in terms of density. What he is proposing on this side is basically a driveway. However, its thickness will be to the standard of a local street, public street. The only thing really it will not have is curb.
I've not been out there. Is it a flat land or what's the topography?
Flat adjacent.
It is,
It rolls. Yeah.
I'm not.
It increases up in this direction, and then from around here, it flattens.
And is there any sense, given that the rest of what's down Cherokee is undeveloped, that's a big open section of land, it seems to me this project could potentially, you could have some interconnectivity between this project and successive development down Cherokee. Is that how this plan is envisioned, or is there sort of a permanent line at the end of that lot?
That is the developer, David Myers, had tried several times to acquire this property.
So you mean the rest of it,
and actually build a street, kind of a frontage road, put a local street on it, and build single-family lots, fronting on the local street, and that adjoining property owner will not sell it.
I'm concerned about the private drive. How is there a capability? Is there a capability to convert that or make that requirement to be a public street? Because obviously the owner of record currently understands the difference between a private drive and a public street. However, the future owners, which I've seen several times and been called about, why is my street not being scraped?
Because it's your driveway.
When to them, their driveway is right in front of their garage door. And if there is the potential for extension further out, and we're stubbing it right here, we've built a insufficient road that will have to be, re-engineered, I would assume.
As I mentioned, the key difference between this and a public street standard for a lane in particular, it's basically sidewalks, curb. For this project, garbage pickup will be at the roadside, not inside the property, because it's not a public street. That's one indicator. One of the elements we're looking at as we're working on designing on crafting regulations the Planning Commission is looking at is putting signage when you have a development of this nature, to clearly indicate to a buyer from the onset that you're buying property on a driveway, not on a public street. So that's one of the requirements that we're looking at.
So that little area next to that first unit's where the trash pickup would be? Is that what you referenced?
This area?
Yeah.
Now this is parking. This is a parking area. Basically kind of visitors parking.
Where are you saying the trash pickup? I think that's what he's asking.
They will have to take the trash down to Brook Hollow for pickup.
10 red dumpsters?
Trash cans, yeah.
Yeah, 10 red dumpsters? Okay, I just want to make sure we were...
And one other thing that he is considered in doing this is providing this turnaround area where a dumpster truck could turn and get out of the site.
So he is planning on that, or we are imagining that the dumpsters would be on Brook Hollow?
Under current city policy, if it's not a public street, they will have to take it to the roadside under current city policy.
And what about scraping?
We would not remove.
We would not do that.
And wasn't there some conversation about fire turnaround and that being a driveway? Is there sufficient space for a fire truck to get in there? And
There is room for expand. It's currently designed in a concept plan. The fire department has reviewed this and it meets their requirements. But at a concept plan level, this has just been a concept plan. When it gets to the full engineering design, all of this may be expanded. This may be further enlarged on both sides.
Oh, yeah, I'm chairing, thank you. So are there any other questions of staff? Is there any action you wish to take at this point?
We move for approval, we can move it to the second vote and hear from the people there. So I'll move approval at least to get to that point, to hear what
We
other
have
people say.
a
at the
motion, is
hearing.
there a second?
second.
There's a second. Any further discussion of moving this on to second reading and public comment? Would you call the roll?
Commissioner Calhoun.
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler.
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise.
Yes.
And Mayor Brock.
Ooh, I made it through that without messing
Thank
it up.
you,
Now it's back to you.
Mr. Peterson.
I'm sorry, I was sending Mr. Mitchell an email there. Just
He's standing right there.
Supplemental budget. Just to let you know where we are.
thank you, sir. Your next ordinance is ordinance number 4700-19. An ordinance appropriating additional funds to the various departments and divisions of the city of Johnson City, Tennessee, with the additional revenue from local, state, and federal sources. This is a supplemental budget to the FY19 budget, ready for your consideration on first reading.
This is also a public hearing, Mr. Peterson.
It is public hearing as it is a first reading of a budget ordinance. Thank you, ma'am.
I will open the public hearing on the supplemental budget 4700-19 budget ordinance. Is there anyone here to speak for or against? Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing. Commissioners,
Move for approval.
Second.
there's a motion and a second. Any questions about what this entails here? We've reviewed it in the past. So Ms. Jennings, call the roll if you would.
Commissioner Calhoun.
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler.
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise.
Yes.
Mayor Brock.
Yes.
Next ordinance is ordinance number 4702-19. An ordinance adopting tax rates for the 2019 tax year, which is the calendar year. As you're aware, the state of Tennessee did a reassessment of all properties in Washington County, including Johnson City. Property values went up during this particular cycle. So the state law prohibits us from generating additional revenue from a reappraisal. So in the equation, you have a tax rate and a value. In order to not gain additional revenue, when the values go up, you must adjust the rate downward. So the state of Tennessee comes back to us with a recommended certified rate for Washington County that allows us to have a, what's the word I'm looking for, Janet? So that they're the same in all three counties.
Equalized.
An equalized tax rate. Thank you, ma'am. Because Carter County and Sullivan County didn't go through a reappraisal process this year. So we are readjusting our certified tax rates, and that would result in the Johnson City properties within Washington County having a tax rate of $1.71 per hundred. Carter County would be $1.83 per hundred, and those properties within Johnson City that are within Sullivan County would be taxed at a rate of $1.95 per hundred. The reason you need to adopt this is to get the certified rate. We're also rounding up to $1.71 from $1.7069. Thank you.
Where do you think we are in the tax, when someone challenges their appraisal, tax equalization, is that what they call it?
The Board of Equalization, when I saw a couple of their members within the last week or two, feel like they'll be hearing appeals through the end of the month, which is much longer than normal, but not unique when we go through a reappraisal cycle.
So we could, I mean, this is based on what they know today. So
This recommendation from the state is based on the actual property values before the appeal process starts.
So if they lower the appraised
So as-
value of these challenges,
As the local board.
we could lose revenue.
And/or the state upholds some of the appeals, some of the value that the state determined will be eroded. Therefore, there is a probability, based on past history, that we will lose revenue as a result of the reappraisal and appeals process. That typically happens. Janet, do you ever remember us not losing money during one of these cycles?
No, it's not been terribly significant, but we generally do lose a little ground. I was looking at the growth. It looks like in Washington County, we've had some good growth, which we get to keep the growth. So in net new personal property, we had 18 million on the assessed value. Net new real property, 8.5 million. Sullivan County as well had some good growth in real property, so we're gonna have some good growth. The only action that is possible to take in order to combat the possible appeals is to actually pass a tax rate increase. And if that were ever to be your desire, we can calculate, once all the appeals are processed, we can calculate the impact from those appeals and bring that back to you, and then you could decide what action, if any, to take.
everybody to understand that it's not over, really. It's not over till it's over.
It's quite possible to lose some ground, we do.
Right.
I know they've had some pretty heavy activity.
Okay, commissioners?
Got a public hearing.
Oh, I'm sorry, thank you. I'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone to speak for or against us certifying the tax rate as presented by the state? Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing. Commissioners,
Move for approval.
is there a second?
Second.
Any other discussion about this? Questions? Okay, Ms. Jennings.
Commissioner Calhoun?
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise?
Yes.
Mayor Brock?
Yes.
Next order of business is consideration of resolution of the Hawk Landing annexation. A resolution to annex certain property located within the 10th Civil District of Washington County, Tennessee, adjoining the present corporate boundaries of the city of Johnson City, Tennessee, and to incorporate the same within the corporate boundaries of the city of Johnson City, Tennessee, said property being known as the Hawk Landing annexation. To zone said property R2, low-density residential as described herein, and to amend the zoning map of the city of Johnson City, Tennessee accordingly, being a part of the appendix to ordinance number 1519, is ready for your consideration on second reading and public hearing.
Mayor, Commissioners, this is a request from the property owner, Mr. Dan Hawk, to have this piece of property annexed into the city. It's currently 2 large parcels. However, he is only requesting that a portion of each of these 2 parcels be annexed into the city. And that would be 3.42 acres. The purpose is to construct 6 single-family residential lots on houses on individual lots, basically a subdivision development. The Planning Commission has approved a preliminary plat for this project, subject to you approving the annexation of this piece of property and assigning an R2 zoning district to it. Staff has done a fiscal impact analysis. The initial fund estimate stands at $48,857, and the recurring estimate is $38,057. The difference just comes from water and sewer tap fees. Water and sewer is available to the property, and it will be the responsibility of the developer to pull this to the side under the subdivision development process. The Planning Commission at its meeting on May 14 considered this request and recommended that you approve the annexation request and the plan of services.
Any questions of staff before we open the public hearing? Okay, hearing none, I will open the public hearing. Is there anyone who would like to speak for or against this request? If you come forward and state your name and address. Mr. Hawk?
Bill Hawk, 39 Single Tree Court. Of course, I'm for it and happy to answer any questions that anybody might have. So currently, it's zoned in the county like an A1 and an A2, which I could basically do anything with. So I think for adjoining property owners, this is a good thing.
Any questions, Mr. Hawk? Okay. Is there anyone else to speak for or against? Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing. Commissioners?
Move for approval?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further question?
Only one comment, and it's what, I'd echo what Bill just said, and that's a lot of times city residents abut county A1 zoning and don't realize how broad the potential uses are in the A1. The gas station, for example.
Trailer park.
Trailer park.
Whatever, or a feedlot. Yeah. Okay, very good. All right, we have a motion and a second. Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun?
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise?
Yes.
Mayor Brock?
Yes.
Next is ordinance number 4693-19. An ordinance to amend the zoning map of the city of Johnson City, Tennessee, being part of the appendix to ordinance number 1519, entitled An Ordinance to Adopt a Code of Laws and Ordinances for the City of Johnson City, Tennessee, and to repeal all laws and ordinances in conflict therewith, and amendatory thereof by assigning a R2 low-density residential zoning to certain property within the 10th Civil District of Washington County, Tennessee, known as the Hawk Landing Annexation. This is ready for your consideration on second reading after public hearing. This simply applies zoning to the property that you just approved on second reading for annexation.
I think we're good on the explanation. I will open the public hearing. Is there anyone to speak for or against the recommended zoning?
You for
of
this
R2?
too? I mean, both sides of the
R2.
coin. Just to keep it interesting.
Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing.
Move for approval?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further comments? Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun?
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise?
Yes.
Mayor Brock?
Yes.
Next is ordinance number 4695-19. An ordinance to amend the municipal code of the city of Johnson City, Tennessee, specifically Title 16, Streets and Sidewalks, by adding a new Chapter 5 related to standards for small wireless communication facilities in the public right-of-way, and repealing all ordinances in conflict herewith. Ready for your consideration on second reading and public hearing.
Manley, do we have any updates or anything new about small cells?
Well, there is some new information. Do we want to go through a summary of the previous information? Keep it short and quick. You're good with the
Just
existing
hit us with
information?
the stuff that's different since the last time.
Okay, so in response to the first reading, we did get some feedback from some cell phone providers, so those in the industry, And that feedback was evaluated by staff, and some proposed revisions have been considered. We felt like we got some really good feedback. So the first one of those is making changes to discretionary review. It cannot be discriminatory. So if we have one standard for a certain utility, we have to apply that same standard for small cell. And so what we found was that the city code gave authority to the city manager to approve new utility poles. And so we've taken that from a planning commission power to giving that to the city manager, making it administrative, but a city manager responsibility. And that limits now the planning commission's discretionary review to anything that's outside of the design standards that we've presented. If they want to do something that's outside of the proposed design standards, then they would have to come to the planning commission. Planning commission would also consider some of the impacts if they want to locate above ground facilities, but I'll talk about that in just a second. The next item, page 9, is co-location authorizations. We had in there that if they needed third-party approval, if they were going to attach to a Bright Ridge pole, as part of their application, they needed to submit that they had gotten authority from that third party. We heard that was a concern when they're trying to evaluate what's the timeline going to be for our application process. They see something like that, and that looks like something that could bog down their process. So we are now have language in there that states that they have to submit that authorization before final approval rather than at the onset of their application process. So we'll still get it, but we don't want to, so they can run concurrently. They can be working with the third party while they're also trying to apply for a permit from us.
May I interrupt for a moment, please? Okay. Okay, we're not painting ourselves into a box here, are we? Because once we receive the application, we have a finite number of days to approve it, or it's automatically considered approved. So they're not shifting the time burden even tighter on us, are they? I don't know that I'm real comfortable with that, because if they don't get all of their information to us from the third party while our clock's running.
We would deny it if we don't have that information at the end of our shot
So we can
clock.
deny it and still not get penalized by the time clock.
So we're watching our time clock, we're watching our shot clock count down. They're not providing us with this authorization that they need to provide for us to approve. We send them a notice of denial saying that their application was not complete, that they didn't satisfy all the requirements of our ordinance.
So just trying to better understand what was wrong with the way we had it. We liked it the way we had it.
I am totally open to changing it back. This was done to make it more customer friendly to the cell phone provider industry. We got feedback from them saying, when they look at a city and say, hey, these third-party vendors that actually do the installation of these, they're trying to get contracts with Verizon and AT&T and folks, and so they're working with those providers, and they're saying we think Johnson City is a good location. We can handle their application process. We've reviewed it. We think that we can get this done in X number of days. But when they see something like that's required before they can even apply, then their number of days for when they can guarantee to Verizon that they could get a project complete becomes a little more iffy, because they don't know how their process is going to go with that third party.
So what if they make multiple applications, and what they've done is take a much larger project and broken it down into smaller pieces, and we approve 1, 2, and 3. 4 is a situation like this. They get started on 1, 2, and 3, and in this application, the third party says, no, we're not going to do a co-locate, they've already started, they've already spent money, and then are they not going to be inclined to come down here and say, y'all have to make a special exception for us because we've already spent this money, this thing's already rolling down the hill? I mean, I'm not trying to be not customer friendly, but I've seen a lot of these things happen before.
Yeah.
And personally, if I was going to spend a lot of money to do something like this, I'd have it all worked out with all my permissions before I ever came down here, because it gets kind of squirrely when you spend money without all your permissions.
The way the state law reads, even if they submit multiple locations within an application, we are required as a city to evaluate them independently and give feedback on them at each location. So we would be forced to do that anyway. So let's say there's four locations. We have to say this one, we can't say, all right, this one doesn't look good, so we're going to deny them all. We have to give a response for each one individually. And so if one of them is waiting on authorization, we would say that's either incomplete, or you have 60 days to submit that, or we will deny it. The other ones are good to go. And so they'll know that from the outset, because that's the application review process that's set out by the state law.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for.
That's all right. I have a question, first of all, for you, Pete. All of our street lights, do we own the physical street light and Bright Ridge cares for them, or do they own those poles?
We might own 10. Very, very few. We lease and pay. We lease the structure and pay Bright Ridge to maintain the structures and the illumination.
Because my question is going to be this, but they may be installing these small cells on our property in other areas or other ways.
They can use street signs, directional signposts. They can use the columns that the mast arms that traffic signals hang off of. They can use some of our facilities, but in our case, I would imagine the vast majority are going to be on poles that belong to CenturyLink or Bright Ridge or Charter or Comcast.
So my question is this: if they're installing, whether we own it, Bright Ridge owns it, I know what happens on Bright Ridge side, but they're injured because the pole that they're getting ready to install on, there's a weakness in it and it falls and they're injured. Who's responsible? Or they damage our property.
I could only guess. I don't know, but there's going to have to be some general liability with some blanket coverage naming the city as additionally insured or whomever owns the pole.
So what happens, you get the third party and they're out in a truck that doesn't even have a sign on the side of it, and they're climbing these poles with a ladder up against it. If there's a weakness in the pole and it falls and they're injured, then they come back to us. Well, you had a weak pole, you didn't, there's negligence
We have the
there.
indemnification and insurance requirements in the ordinance, and that's been reviewed by risk management. And they said, make these couple of tweaks, and otherwise the language looks good. And so we've done what risk management advised.
So you have those. Thankfully, we don't own many poles.
But they could
the ones
also
we do
damage,
own are short.
they could also damage our property too, so.
True.
Yeah.
They would be required in any event, whoever owns the poles, to check wind loads, to check structural integrity. You just can't attach it because the pole's there, because the pole may have been developed only for that pole. So there would have to be checks. Now, if the pole falls, then you defer to what legal is talking about on the liability.
What we require on the Bright Ridge poles, they're supposed to test the pole before they ever go up on it. Now we've got all these third parties doing all this stuff.
Then if you're in state right-of-ways, there's foundation issues. We run with traffic signal poles all the time. So there's a lot of things you gotta double check. It's just not attaching.
I do think that all that has been built into this ordinance. Are we good on that one?
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for allowing me to ask some
Well,
questions.
thank you.
The third item we did is we added some language to give better clarity to situations that would result in a conference between staff and the applicant. And so if there is a safety concern, such as what we were just discussing, or if multiple requests from multiple providers are coming in simultaneously for the same location or in close proximity, that could trigger a conference. If we have upcoming construction plans in the area, we can say, hold on, we need to have a sit down and discuss that. And also, if we see that there should be some type of alternative design proposed where there may be an opportunity for co-location. All of that comes from state law, and we added that clarity on page 13. Number 4, the undergrounding and concealment measures. This is nothing new. We didn't really change any language. We streamlined some language and put them all under one heading. So this was just kind of a document organization, moving this around so that all the information that discusses concealing equipment or burying equipment or the process for where you locate above ground equipment was all in one, the same paragraph or under the same heading. And then number 5, this is still ongoing. We got feedback that our heights, especially in our historic district where we have a proposed height of maximum height of 15 feet, that was going to be unworkable. That was too low. And so we are trying to get additional technical expertise on what height is workable. The state law says that historic districts we can impose design standards to protect the integrity of our historic district, but we cannot essentially prohibit these facilities by making the design standards so difficult. So we are trying to gather more information from a technical standpoint to figure out what height will they be able to function at, which would also protect the character of our historic districts. So we're working on that right now. The poles downtown 90% of the light poles are at 25 feet. So we want to prevent a situation where you may have something that's towering over our existing light poles downtown. But at the same time, we can't effectively prohibit these by having a standard that's too difficult. So somewhere, I'm thinking we may end up somewhere in that 25 to 30 foot range, but we need to get confirmation. These changes, so that wraps up the changes that are being proposed. They were not included these were not ready for the agenda packet, but I wanted to make sure that they were presented to you tonight so that they kind of get your consent to include these items in the final draft for third reading.
Going over this with the Historic Zoning Commission.
That's another step. So that would be, once this is established, when we have our setup by districts that are not based on the same boundaries as our historic zoning district. So our historic commercial area includes the entire B2 and B3, which is a wider area than just our historic district. So the next step after we establish this ordinance would be to go to the Historic Zoning Commission and work with adding some language to the design guidelines because a provider will have to get a certificate of appropriateness if they want to locate within the historic district. So there's some layers to this that are still ongoing.
So they have to make them look like what they looked like in 1910? Small cells? Yeah.
Exactly.
Good. This is public hearing, correct?
This is.
Let me open the public hearing. Is there anyone to speak for or against small cells moving into the city of Johnson City? Seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing. Commissioners?
Matt, I had one more question. Can you go back to the last recommendations? The fourth bullet point on 4, waiver of undergrounding requirements. Can you explain further that process? What applications, I mean, there's a lot of neighborhoods where they're required and there's, I think, no waiver capability. Is this
That's what this would
overriding
be.
that?
So if there is, if the facility cannot function underground and it must be located above ground, then they would have to get approval from the Planning Commission to essentially forego that requirement that's in the subdivision regulations. The Planning Commission has authority over the subdivision regulations, and so that's why they would be the body for any kind of anything that would be outside of what's required in the subdivision regulations. And so by when necessary, that's necessary was when if the facility needs to be above ground in order, which these will need to be, they need to get that approval through. They would conference with staff to determine where that location would be, and if that is the result of that is outside of, does not align with the subdivision regulations, then they would need to get that waiver from the Planning Commission.
So if I heard you correctly, we're going to see a lot of waivers in subdivisions?
Well, my understanding is I don't believe we're going to see a lot of requests for these in our conventional subdivisions where we have buried utilities. The density is not there. The way that the small cells facilitate the network is when a number of users are in close proximity to this smaller pole. All those users start to draw data from that small pole, therefore freeing up congestion on the larger towers. So that's why you'll find them in dense urban areas rather than in our pretty large lot subdivisions. But there certainly could be that case where we would see waivers if they wanted to locate in a subdivision.
And is the Planning Commission the final say in those waivers, or would that then flow up to the commission?
The way this is written, it would be just the Planning Commission.
Move for approval.
Second. Okay, any further? Okay, Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun?
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise?
Yes.
Mayor Brock?
Yes. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you. We'll see you at third reading.
Your next order of business is consideration of a contract with Reed Madden Design for the development and installation of the sesquicentennial artwork at Legacy Plaza. The contract term is for $147,000 with a requirement for installation to be completed by November the 30th, 2019. As a part of the $147,000, there's an honorarium of $29,400 if the installation does not occur on or before the required date. The artist shall forfeit the right to receive the $29,400. So that is our incentive to ensure the project is completed in time for the celebration.
29,000 is within the 147?
Is within the 147, yes, ma'am.
Okay. And this is a budgeted item that we budgeted with the sesquicentennial
Yes,
budget
ma'am.
originally. Commissioners? Have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, is there a second?
Second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion?
Yeah, just a couple of, one comment. I think this went back to the Sesquicentennial Full Commission for their review, and I understand there's essentially no comments other than just receiving the report and moving forward. Okay.
I will be voting no, not to not let the project go, but because I still think that that money would be better spent toward my fountain and lights and dancing music thing to attract more people to downtown. So nothing against the Sesquicentennial Commission, but
Thank you for that explanation.
No problem.
Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun?
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler?
No.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise?
Yes.
Mayor Brock?
Yes.
The next order of business is consider amendment number 1 to the contract of sale for the city-owned property on East Main Street, known as the Hands-On Building. This is necessary as the option expires July the 31st, and we don't think we're going to get it closed by then, so we're looking for a 30-day extension on this option.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is 30 days sufficient? Is that a
That
safe
was
bet?
what was requested by the hopeful new owners.
They're still doing their due diligence. Is that the reason for this? So they're still doing inspections and that kind of thing?
Correct. And we're also wrapping up the development agreement, which was added really kind of at the last minute when you voted on this back in May. The development agreement was drafted, sent to them, also sent to Ms. Sandos and sent to Carl McInturf. And in the month of June and early July, we had some vacations going on, so it was hard to get that whole group together. But when we did, we realized there was some couple more changes to the document that was going to require us to extend it. We were hoping to get it on tonight's agenda, but 30 days should be adequate.
And when we say hands-on, that includes all the 5 buildings?
All 5 buildings, yes, ma'am.
Be good. Is there a motion? Second? Okay. Ms. James?
Commissioner Calhoun?
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise?
Yes.
Mayor Brock?
Yes.
Mayor, this takes us to the manager's report, and if I could ask Ms. Jennings to review financials for you, please.
I have a note of good news, and I'll keep this short. We received this month, for the month of April, some extra sales tax money as the result of an audit adjustment at the county. So that has brought our sales tax figures for the year closer to budget. So we are only $62,000 away, and we have a couple of months left. And we have seen some pickup in the sales tax collections. So Mayor, I know we've shared some concern. So I really think that we've seen some good fortune here in this one-time adjustment that's gonna probably bring us close to budget for the end of the year.
Those are real sales. It's just the amount of money that was coming
Right.
back to us was,
Exactly. It's a
Calculated
timing
incorrectly.
difference. And it's just where we've not received revenues at some point in the past we should have received.
How far out of whack are we correcting?
We're only $62,000 out at this point.
But
so-
I mean,
What
the
was the
period,
correction?
like, do we know what period of time the correction related to?
I do not. It was
Okay.
about $140,000.
Because it'd be ideal if we're like 3 or 4 months, you know,
Oh, I know.
as opposed to 3 or 4 years.
It's most likely for a year.
Okay.
For a one-year period. In addition, the property tax collections continue to go quite healthy. We did one last push on delinquent collections, send out a letter. We typically do that in May, just to try to get everything in we can by the end of June. Since we start closing the books and we're in the depths of that right now, until mid-August, we'll be really covered up with that. And we've also been working with the financial consultant for the software, so it's a very, very busy time right now. But I'm happy to say that at this point, we have collected 97.3% of our 2018 tax billing, which is a very high percentage. We still have, from these figures, we'll still be able to count 3 months of collections just because of the way the accounting rules work. So we anticipate that to come in strong.
at what point in time are the uncollectibles, then do they go for tax sales?
We didn't have a tax sale, we won't have a tax sale this year, because they're taking a year off because they've caught up to a good point. Next year, we'll have a couple of years, and I think next year be caught up to about 2017.
So we'll continue to try to collect these
Absolutely.
until the point in time when
Yes.
there would be a tax sale.
Absolutely. We turn them over to Chancery Court at some point, and then they put in place some collection efforts, and we get some good experience from that office as well. They do a great job. So by the time it gets to tax sale, it's not really a whole lot. A lot of it is properties that are not very attractive. We're running into some issues with some environmental issues on some properties. And we were fortunate, the Appalachia Service Project properties hopefully in the near future will come back on the tax rolls as they improve those properties and get those properties, that's a good service that Appalachia Service Project
Some of
provides.
them were dedicated last week.
Yeah, they'll get
So-
them in the hands of some property owners, get those back on the tax rolls, and that's certainly going to help us. And those did come from some of the delinquent property taxes. So, anyway, I think the news is good on the property tax side. Like I said, we're closing the books. I don't see anything of concern at this point. So I think you're going to be happy with what we report to you after we close the books. I'm happy to address any questions.
Well, hopefully with almost 6,000 motorcycles in town, we'll have a real tick in
Hope they
sales tax.
Eat, sleep, and
Yeah.
spend money.
Fill up your gas.
That's right.
Right. Thank you, Tammy. Any questions? All right. Anything
A
else on your
couple of
part?
other things I'll bring to your attention very, very quickly. In your report, in the back of your packet is the construction project report that gives you a full update on where we are. Langston is getting real close to completion. The police training facility is very, very close to completion. The new HVAC at Transit is about 50%. The one that I do want to bring to your attention, mainly for the purposes of putting the heat on the contractor, is the cafeteria and gymnasium project at Liberty Bell isn't where it should be at this point in time. Mr. Trivets had a couple of conversations with the architect and with contractor, and they keep assuring us that they're going to pick up the tempo and get us back up to speed and still deliver on time. But I can assure you, we will have very regular conversations with the contractor.
How far off schedule do you think they are now?
Remind us of,
They're probably a month behind where I would really like for them to be
in it next fall?
to be in it on time next fall. Yes, sir.
Hear that, David?
They've gotten footings begun. Some of them on the lower level, I think, are done. Steel's in place for the footings. But at this point in time, they should have a bunch of masonry laid up for the foundation walls, and 100% of the footings should be in, and they should be further down the road. I don't know. I will do my best to give them a little bit of benefit, but the weather hasn't been that wet. And you've heard me say this before, they better get done on time, and that gym floor better not bounce. That was the two directives to the architect and the contractor. So I will no longer preach to you all, but the contractor's going to hear a lot of that out of me until we got the ribbon.
A question on Langston.
Yes,
I
sir.
know when the Public Works is to do the finish grading,
Yes,
is
sir.
that correct?
Yes, sir.
And then will Public Works do the landscape work, or do we sub that out?
What we will do in-house will be the finish grade, seeding, strawing, landscaping. There's quite a bit of flat concrete work to be done. We're going to do all that. New sidewalks in the neighborhood, curbs and gutters. Phil and I were talking today. There's going to be a very substantial amount of work to be done to Welborn. That's the narrow concrete street. His folks are hopefully going to finish up sometime next week out at Green Line in Peoples, and they will be moving to the Langston neighborhood. And Phil told me they will be in there for multiple months working. So we'll get the Langston project proper done first, and then they will remain in the neighborhood working on streets, curbs, gutters, sidewalks, those types of things.
Who was doing the fence for us there? Somebody else was building.
General Shale has graciously donated the brick columns and the fence around the Langston project. They've had, as I understand it, they've had a production facility challenge somewhere else, and they have sent that particular crew over to get their production facility up and running again, and they will be back hopefully sometime here in the next couple of weeks or so.
I think too, Mr. Stahl, do you have any information on the grant that was awarded? The league group applied for a grant and I think was awarded, it's $105,000 per year for the next 5 years.
It is, and that's an operational grant that will not, it's not eligible for capital expenses, and it's done in conjunction with the Johnson City school system. So Charlie and I have talked, we are getting with Dr. Barnett and the school system. They will actually be the ones, I think, administering the grant and making final determinations on how those operational dollars will be expended.
But it will really help on the operations side that we
Yes,
can
ma'am.
probably, adjust our budget somewhat in the years to come.
Yes, ma'am.
But they worked very hard on that, and I think it's going to make a real difference.
Operations and, of course, programming with the whole thing will be a
Right.
great benefit.
We've hired Mr. Adam Dixon to be the center director, which is going to be great. Really good.
And I would answer any questions you may have.
What's the plan for Welborn? Do you know?
The plan for, Phil and I are still in the discussion stage on that, but that street is in such a state that you really can't pave it and do any good. So we're probably looking at a total removal of the street as it now exists and end up with new curbs and gutters and drainage and a good asphalt street. That street is fairly narrow. So I've asked Phil to look at the possibilities of widening that street maybe 2-3 feet, because that would make two passing vehicles a much more comfortable pass without making it so wide that the speed of the traffic's going to pick up
Do we have
significantly.
extra right-of-way, or is that part of what's being looked at?
That's correct, sir. That's what we're examining. We should have, but we just need to make sure.
Then the question on everyone's mind, and I mean my wife and my mother, when is Hobby Lobby opening?
It's looking pretty
Boy,
good.
at the risk of disappointing one of my bosses, I have no idea.
Well, I just didn't know, It
I do
looks
know
like
that-
something's happening
That
up
At
there.
Home has hired employees. I do know that. The developers made a great progress on redeveloping that building. Parking lots paved and striped, and I would assume that those two facilities would be open reasonably soon. And I've heard unofficially that the third space has also been obligated.
The intersection looks wonderful, and I don't know how the traffic signal just went live today, this
It
morning.
did this morning, yes, ma'am.
Sure they'll be working to get that timed exactly right.
It flows nicely.
Good.
Anything
It'll
that
be
they've
different.
improved.
Yeah.
It is different, and I would like to encourage everyone that goes in that area, if you're turning left off of State of Franklin and you're wanting to go onto Green Line and go up towards Home Depot and Chick-fil-A and Best Buy and all that, you do not have to stay in that right-hand left turn lane on State of Franklin anymore. You can use both of those left turn lanes, and you can still go right without having to cut somebody off in order to make that right to go up towards Home Depot now. So it's just going to be an adjustment period, but those two left turn lanes off of State of Franklin will get you a right-hand turn up People Street.
Up to about where Chick-fil-A sits, right? It doesn't then narrow down.
It starts narrowing back down about IHOP and up in there, and the
Buy
full
parking lot.
tapers together by Best Buy.
Well, kudos to Public Works, to Phil's group, and they've worked out there in the heat,
They
really
have.
hot, and traffic, and
They've done a really
they've
good
done a
job with
really
that.
good job, yeah, so thanks to that.
I guess the other thing, while we're talking about all that, I think we've gotten all of the school parking lots done with the exception of North Side and South Side. Phil told me that North Side was partially done and they had to go somewhere else and work on something that was a little more pressing, and they would be back. So that was, that'll be good news to have all that done before school opens up.
And are they still under the idea they'll do that in the next 2 weeks?
Yes, sir.
Pete, the work that's being done out at Boones Creek right now, is that our underground work? Is that our sewer work?
The work belongs to us. The contractor that's doing the road work is also doing the underground utilities.
It is starting to back up out there.
We have nothing to do with that. That would be a TDOT project, thankfully.
But I will say I was in Gray earlier today, and I came back by way of Gray Station, just because I knew I didn't want to make a left off 26.
Someone at TDOT was extremely smart when they decided to 5-lane 36 all the way out to 75 rather than 6-lane I-26, because now you've got 2 ways to go. And if for some reason one's backed up or closed, you've got an alternate route that's still open. We would really encourage people to use the Kingsport Highway, State Route 36, to avoid the Boones Creek interchange for the next 18 to 20 months.
Well, it's the people who are west of that then who have the Knob Creek option, I guess, but
Yes.
then you have to go through the tunnel. They're
Yes,
the ones
ma'am.
I think who are affected most.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions of Mr. Peterson? We do have a public input. I will open public input if there's anyone left in the
Charlie
room who would
Preston,
like
anything you wanna
to sit down. Seeing no one, I will close the public input. Commissioners, anything you want to update anybody on real quickly? I have a couple of things.
We have
Larry?
the Mountain Dew thing.
Tomorrow at 9.
9 o'clock.
Thank y'all for doing that. I'm not going to be able to be there. I have my first 2 kids in the morning, so thank y'all.
9 o'clock.
If they're
9
giving
o'clock.
away free samples, please get me one. All right. Anything else for everybody?
Just a heads up that we're going to have some educational session at our next agenda meeting on the immunization situation, so
Sounds
thank
like
you
you
for
need it.
putting that on.
You've been immunized before you went to Chicago.
Going to get a shot next year. This is cool.
Tom, anything? Tom? Vice Mayor? Okay. We have an opportunity to visit Chattanooga one day to look at some economic development. And if this commission feels like this would be a good day of our time, I think probably sometime in the late August, maybe early September, if we could find a time, Mr. Peterson, I'll ask you to see get Beth to see if she can find a date for us to go. And I've been talking with some folks who've done a lot of work down there, and I think it would really be good for us to look at strategically how we find what our value proposition is here in Johnson City going forward. So if we could look for a date, it would also be a visit to EPB, which is their power distributor, because they've been tremendously involved in the economic development down there. When they announced their gig city, I mean, it just changed everything. So I think it'd be a great trip for us to get some high-level exposure to what's happened in Chattanooga. So when you see that list, let's go forward, if we could. We have, I made a note here and I can't read my writing. Okay, one of the things you are going to see, and so here's the question of the night. What's happened what will we be celebrating in August 2020? Anybody know? August 2020. Women's suffrage, that's right.
The
So it's the
deciding vote came from Tennessee.
Came from Tennessee. There is, the reason I bring this up tonight, there is a committee that's convening next week, made up of a number of people in the community, of which I'm going to serve on that as well, to look at how we celebrate that next year. Now, to put it in a realistic time frame, the year I was born, women only had the right to vote for 30 years. So we want to really have an educational component so that our young people can understand the significance of this. And that's right, Tennessee was the deciding state in passing the referendum for the women to vote in 1920, August of 1920, that's right. So anyway, just want to let you know that you'll probably start seeing some press coverage on it. And Knoxville is getting on it in a very big way. And some of the suggestions are things like the community theater, maybe doing a play, something to kind of show. What we found from some of the research that's already gone on is that there are two women's groups here in Johnson City who were very significant in the suffrage movement. And so that'll be kind of displayed as well. So I'll just give you an FYI on that. And, one final thing. There is a group that's meeting with NetRep and Networks with looking at how they can merge to become more regional. It met today, and there's some movement, really kind of moving in that direction where the two boards are going to get together, look at a MOU, and then how this would work. The big thing for us is to look at what, if they merge for a regional economic development group, what is that going to leave us that we have to do that may not be within the scope of the work that they're going to do? So we discussed that this morning. We've talked about the retail side. We've talked about, development along the Walnut Street corridor, and how much then are we going to have to focus on economic development within the city, where they're going to be taking a broader look at things. So it's going to be interesting to see how all that plays out. All right. Anything else? All right. If not, meeting adjourned.